The POW-MIA cover represents our POW-MIA. It's for those who have served and those currently serving in the uniformed services of the United States are ever mindful that the sweetness of enduring peace has always been tainted by the bitterness of personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that while we enjoy our daily pleasures, there are others who have endured and may still be enduring the agonies of pain and deprivation and imprisonment. Therefore, we begin our activities. We pause to recognize our POWs and MIAs. Young Marines, all right, forward and play our national anthem. All veterans, first responders, please hand salute when appropriately.
Present arms.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rugged glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Face. Switch shoulder. Arms.
Audience, please stand. Those in uniform, please salute. Those non-uniform, please place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. 2.
Thank you. Now we're going to have our chief, let's see here, we're going to have Chino Police Department Captain Weiss Simmons give our opening prayer.
Thank you. Let us pray. Almighty God, giver of all victories, we thank thee for the opportunities which abide in our land, thy guidance in the hour of peril, and thy tender love in times of need. Help us to remember with reverence the valor and devotion of our departed comrades, not only those whose bodies consecrate our country's soil, but also those who sleep beyond the seas, and those whose resting places will not be known until the last day when the deep will have given up its dead. O God, teach us to honor them by ever cherishing the ideals for which they fought. Keep us steadfast in the cause of human rights and liberties, of law and order, and true Americanism. Give us the power to see and the will to do right. Grant that the American Legion may preserve the high ideal for which our comrades died. May thy merciful blessings rest upon those they left behind. Keep us forever firm in righteousness, humble of heart, and unselfish in purpose. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Captain. Thank you. Now we're going to have an introduction of our VIPs. That means very important people. All right, Chino, we have Mayor Eunice Yola. We have Mayor Pro Tem Tom Howie. Council Member Earl Elrod. And then Chino, let's see, we have Chino City Manager Matt Valentine. How do you pronounce your last name? Valentine, okay. Like Valentine, got it. All right. And Chief Karen Comstock. Yeah, you better clap for her. Okay, and then we have Chino Police Department Captain Kenneth Bassart. Chino Police Department Captain Wes Simmons. He was just up here giving our prayer. Thank you very much. He walked up and we put him to work. So, thank you. Community Services, our commission is Brenda Strong, Bernice Gray, Linda Taguchi. All right, there. All right, and then we have Planning Commission, Walt Pocock. Well, there you are, Walt. All right. Then we have Chino Fire Department Fire Board Member Ed Gray, way back there. Then we have, so let's see, we don't have nobody from the Norma Taurus yet. So then we have Representative of San Bernardino County, District 4, Supervisor Office, Karen Howie. Mrs. Howie, right? I just found that out. All right. Gary George. There you are, Gary George. Thank you, Valentine, Mr. Valentine. Thank you. All right. Mayor, would you like to step up here and give a few comments about the day? Mayor Eunice Yola.
Having trouble with names today. It's rough when you have names that are hard to pronounce. Well, good morning, and I'm honored to be here with you to pay respects to the brave men and valiant women of the United States Armed Forces. This ceremony is very special for many reasons, but first and foremost, it's a time where we honor the fallen men and women of our nation's military. This location is special. It's where our city's war memorial is located, in the center, as well as the Chino Liberty Courtyard. Both monuments are places for us to honor our local heroes while reflecting on their sacrifices and the impact those sacrifices have made for our community. In May 1868, General John A. Logan, the commander-in-chief of the Union Veterans Group, known as the Grand Army of the Republic, issued a decree that May 30th should become a nationwide day of commemoration for the more than 620,000 soldiers killed in the then recently ended Civil War. Since then, an alarming number of Americans have been killed in all U.S. wars. That number is estimated at 1.1 million people. May we never forget the sacrifices of those who paid the ultimate price, and may we always remember that our freedom is not free. It comes at a very high price paid by our local military families and servicemen and women throughout the country. Here in Chino, we value the patriotic spirit of our servicemen and women, and we intentionally honor those who gave their lives in every opportunity presented to us as a city. I ask you, as community members, to please keep our service members and their families close in your hearts. Honor them daily, and their families who also serve our country through their support and sacrifice. They all deserve our ongoing care and prayers year-round. Honoring the brave men and valiant women who wear our nation's uniform is a small token of appreciation that the City Council and I cherish every year on this day. We're grateful and thankful to the individuals who carry on the distinguished and honorable service to our country. Last night, I was watching a PBS station that was the National Memorial for Memorial Day. It was held at Washington, D.C. And the testimonies of those who knew people who had died in the service were truly, truly touching. It showed Arlington Cemetery, and it showed the mothers and the fathers and the brothers and the sisters and the uncles and aunts that were putting flowers on the graves and talking about their lost loved ones. Families that have been touched by those that were so very brave to put their lives on the line so that we can enjoy the lives we have in our country. There is a saying by a gentleman, I looked it up last night, we've heard it in various ways, but a gentleman by the name, he was a philosopher, George Santayana, who said, "Those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat it." Let us all support each other and not forget our past, not forget the suffering and the sacrifices that were given so that we could live the way we do today. Honor those who have passed by living the best lives that we can. They ended last night with the song "Stand By Me," and everyone there joined in that song. If we truly stood by each other every day in everything that we did, our world would be so much better. On behalf of the City Council, I would like to thank Don Avila and the members of the American Legion for hosting this morning's ceremony, as they do every year. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and thank you for supporting the men and the women of the U.S. military. Don, I would like to present you with a certificate from our city. In recognition of the American Legion, the City of Chino appreciates the American Legion hosting the 2018 Memorial Day service and thanks you for your support to the Chino of community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. You know, we're talking about unity and together. After 9/11, or that day that it happened, but right after, we were united. I felt very close to my fellow Americans because I didn't know what was going to happen. I was already up in age, but I was ready to put a uniform on and go wherever I was told to go. But I had that feeling right after 9/11 that we were united, and there was so many signs and bumper stickers that said, "United, we shall stand." And that's like the way we are. We bicker amongst each other, sometimes just minor things that don't amount to anything, but it's just like we're one big family. So, anyway, that's all I have to say on that. We're going to have a guest speaker, Captain Kenneth Bassart. Please step forward. There you are. He has a beautiful speech for us.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate it. Good morning. First, I would too like to thank Don and the American Legion for allowing me the opportunity to speak here this morning. I am sincerely humbled and very honored to have the opportunity to do so. About 4 years ago, one of my twin sons, Jacob, approached me and told me that he wanted to join the military, and he asked me if I would support him. I paused, but just for a brief moment, for I knew that sons and daughters were being killed in combat. But nonetheless, I told Jake that I completely and unequivocally supported him in his efforts and his ambition. He then asked me, "But Dad, wouldn't you worry about me?" I told him, "Of course I would worry about you, son." He then asked me, "Then why do you support me joining the military?" I responded by asking him simply, where would we be as a nation if every parent forbid their sons or daughters from serving and protecting our great nation? Eventually, both Jacob and my other son Joshua joined the Air Force and are currently serving. Do I worry about them? Of course I do. But my worry is subdued by the tremendous sense of honor and admiration I have for their display of commitment, selfless sacrifice, and patriotism. I feel blessed by God, who gave me two sons who are so willing to devote themselves to a cause greater than themselves, to raise their right hands and swear an oath to support and defend our nation and our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. If my sons are willing to accept that risk, then surely so am I. I believe it is likely that none of you know of a person named Dan Bullock of Goldsboro, North Carolina, nor do you know of Stephen Hutchinson of Scottsdale, Arizona. I would like to share a little bit about these two men. As a teenager, Dan Bullock had dreams like every other young man. He had a dream of being a pilot, a police officer, or maybe a Marine. As a teenager, though, these dreams seemed very far off in the distant future. That was until Dan decided to forge his birth certificate. He altered his date of birth so it would show that he was 18 years old. On September 18, 1968, Dan enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. He was sent to boot camp at Parris Island, and after boot camp was quickly deployed to Vietnam. During his first firefight, a fierce firefight, Dan broke cover and courageously tried to go get ammunition for his squad. He was instantly struck down and killed by enemy fire. Some of you may think that Dan altered his age by only a few months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. No. Dan was 14 years old when he altered his birth certificate and joined the Marines. This patriot was only 15 when he gave his life for a cause greater than himself. Now let me tell you about another Vietnam War hero named Stephen Hutchinson of Scottsdale, Arizona. Stephen joined the Army in 1966. He served his first one-year tour in Vietnam and survived. He served a second one-year tour in Vietnam and survived. He went on to serve the Army until he retired in 1988. Afterwards, he went on to obtain his PhD in psychology and became a university professor. After the September 11 attacks, Hutchinson wanted to re-enlist, but his wife forbade him. Years went by, and sadly, Hutchinson's wife succumbed to cancer. Now alone, but still motivated by the terrorist attacks of 9/11, Hutchinson committed to his physical conditioning and his athleticism. He was able to get in such great physical shape that he was able to re-enlist in the Army in 2007 at the age of 59. He served in the 2nd Battalion, 34th Armor Regiment, 1st Brigade, Combat Team, 1st Infantry Division. He served a tour in Afghanistan and survived. He then went on and served a tour in Iraq. This committed American patriot, on his 4th combat tour of his lifetime, at the age of 60, was killed by the blast of an IED while on a convoy mission. 15-year-old Dan Bullock is believed to be the youngest service member killed in combat in our modern era, and 60-year-old Stephen Hutchinson is believed to be the oldest. What is it about a 15-year-old and a 60-year-old that compels them to serve our nation? What defines these Americans' fighting spirit? Where do they get their intestinal fortitude, their inspiration, and their motivation? These two men are shining examples of American patriotism, two men who are earnestly committed to a cause greater than themselves, men who are willing to lay down their lives for the protection of others and the protection of the American ideals, willing to die for our republic and for the cause of freedom and liberty for which it stands. All of you in the audience today, I humbly ask to please indulge me for a moment, if you will. I want you to close your eyes. Please close your eyes. I want you to picture a person you love between the ages of 15 and 60. They may be your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife, your son, your daughter, your father or your mother, a niece or a nephew, an aunt or an uncle, or your best friend. Picture these people intently, emblazon their faces in your minds. Thank you. Now imagine that the person you just thought of was one of the service members for whom we are gathered here to remember. Imagine the heartbreaking and excruciating possibility that they will not be at this afternoon's barbecue. They won't be sitting on the front lawn watching fireworks on the 4th of July. They won't answer the phone or answer their text messages. They won't be home for their next birthday party. Their chair at the table will be empty at the next Thanksgiving dinner. Somebody else will have to carve the turkey. Their beds will be unslept in. Your next anniversary may be spent alone. Imagine the terrible possibility that you may never feel their warm embrace or hear their laughter. The fallen service members we remember and honor here today may still have surviving family and friends whose connection they have with their fallen loved ones are only in their memories or perhaps a faded photograph. I hope and I pray that none of us will have to face this tragic possibility. Sadly, some here today are living with this grief. They live their lives today without the loved ones that they love so dearly. If you are the family, friend, or colleague of a fallen service member, will you please stand to be recognized? If you are already standing, please raise your hand. Thank you, and thank you for your sacrifice. For these survivors, I sincerely offer my heartfelt condolences. While a moment ago, I stood proudly at attention for our national anthem. And tonight, I will get down on my knees and I will pray to God and ask that He assuage the anguish of your bereavement and leave you only with the cherished memory of your loved and lost. Our nation owes you an unending debt of gratitude for having laid such a costly sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. While we gather here today to remember the fallen and to share in the grief of our losses, today is also a day where we can find some small degree of solace and even hope. This morning I have used the following words: heroic, selfless, service, courage, honor, commitment, devotion, sacrifice, cause, unequivocal, and patriot. I've used these words to describe the moral fiber and the resilient fortitude of our fallen heroes. These patriots relied on these attributes as the inspiration for them to defend our nation, our freedom, to protect those unable to protect themselves, and to defend certain inalienable rights such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. By embodying these attributes, the brave fallen have perpetuated them for the next generation and have given us a shining and brilliant example of how to live a life that is honorable and admirable. But what if the fallen were able to speak to us? What would they say? What would they ask us? As I thought about this, I was reminded of a scene from the movie Saving Private Ryan. This movie is a story about a group of soldiers during World War II, led by Captain John Miller, who was assigned a mission to locate and safely return Private James Ryan, whose brothers had already been killed in combat, James being the last surviving sibling. Captain John Miller's team was decimated in their efforts to save the private before leading him to safety. In the last battle, Captain Miller was mortally wounded while defending a bridge. In one of the final scenes, barely able to speak, Captain Miller whispered his final words to Private Ryan. "Earn this." Fast forward decades later, while visiting Normandy, France, with his family, the now old James Ryan is standing at the gravesite of Captain Miller and begins to speak to him. He says, "Every day, I think about what you said to me on that bridge. I have tried to live every day of my life as best I could. I hope that was enough. I hope that at least in your eyes, I've earned what all of you have done for me." Ryan then asks his wife, who is standing beside him, "Tell me I've led a good life. Tell me that I'm a good man." So I imagine that the fallen, if they were able to speak to us, might simply turn to us and tell us, "Earn this sacrifice." Ladies and gentlemen, we have a moral imperative to earn the sacrifice of the fallen. How do we earn it? We earn it by living our lives in such a way as to perpetuate the principles, values, and essence of our great nation. We must live our lives with honor and integrity. So I simply challenge you all, earn the sacrifice of the heroes that have fallen. Earn these sacrifices by living your life in a way that honors their memories. Are you? On behalf of Chief Karen Comstock and all the men and women of the Chino Police Department, my heartfelt condolences go out to those of the fallen. May God bless you all, and may God bless the United States of America.
Captain Broussard, you sort of got me right here with the Saving Private Ryan. That was a sad part. But thank you, it was a beautiful speech. Now I have a guest speaker, and I'll start out by saying that we're going to rename our Chino Post to Elmer Carl Jertberg. Jertberg was a corporal, if I'm not mistaken. Well, he's a doughboy from World War I, and from our headquarters, American Legion headquarters, they wanted us to look up where our first commander was interned and see if his headstone or was well taken care of. So Sal Morales, which is another member of our post, him and I went out there and checked out his headstone. He's interned in Holy Cross here in Pomona, and it was well taken care of. And so under the advice of our headquarters and then district, that they would like us to change it if we wish to change it to his name, which it came up a few years back, and I guess it was denied, but we're going to do it again. And his great would be, what would you, step on up here, Steve? It's Steve Houston. Carl Elmer Jetberg was his great uncle. So anyway, he's going to give us a little highlight about this gentleman or doughboy from World War I.
Thank you, Commander Don, for inviting me to come and share a few words with you today about my family, and in particular about my grandmother's brother, Elmer Carl Jertberg. My great-grandparents were Henry and Augusta Jertberg, and they settled in Chino in 1902. That was 116 years ago. Henry, along with his brother Carl, had immigrated from Sweden to Springfield, Missouri in the mid-1800s. And they married wives and began raising their families there in Missouri. My great-uncle Carl moved to Los Angeles around 1880, and shortly thereafter encouraged his brother, my great-grandfather, Henry Jertberg, to move west and join him in Los Angeles in this land of plenty. Henry and Augusta arrived in Los Angeles around 1900 with their 3 small children: their oldest daughter, Winnie, their oldest son, Elmer Jertberg, and my grandmother, Effie Jertberg. However, unfortunately, Henry found Los Angeles too crowded in 1900. Too many people, he said, too busy. So they packed up. He packed up his wife and their 3 children, and they headed east. And they stopped in this small, little, dusty town called Chino, California in 1902. Population was a little less than 1,000 people. Probably really not too greater than what we have here today. Here they would raise all 7 of their children. My great-uncle, Elmer Jertberg, was only about 10 years old when they arrived here. He went to school in the old red brick schoolhouse, which was located right here. He had a paper route delivering newspapers throughout the neighborhood, and in his young adulthood, he was able to partner with a Mr. Fox, and they opened a small clothing store. When World War I broke out and the call for volunteers went forth, Uncle Elmer enlisted in the Army on September 17, 1917. Within 2 weeks, he was assigned to the 41st Division, which they got alerted to right away that they were going to head for overseas duty. He was first assigned to Camp Lewis, Washington, but before he received any training, he was shipped to Camp Mills, Long Island. Took him 6 days and 6 nights to make that trip from Washington to New York. He was one of 1,000 men who were sent forth to try to bolster the 41st Division and bring it up to combat strength. In fact, Elmer Jertberg was your first Chino youth who served in the Army in World War I and served in France. He participated in most of the major battles there, at least 7 he participated in, and he was assigned to the 4th Machine Gun Battalion. He would tell us about an experience that he had. He had many of them during World War I, but one of them that he shared with us was that he found himself in a small village with the 41st Division with the machine gunnery battalion that he worked with, and he was in ankle deep in mud. He was soaked with the rain. He always said, he said it always seemed like before they went into battle, it poured rain. And so that was where he found himself. He was firing his machine gun at German troops that were entrenched across a river in the town of Verdun in northern France. He and his comrades were keeping the German troops from progressing further into France. Suddenly, he said, he remarked, the firing all stopped, and it went completely quiet. He thought it was, and these were his words, it was the end of the world. That was on November 11th, 1918. World War I was over, and at precisely 11 a.m., those guns stopped firing. But Uncle Elmer wasn't on his way home to Chino yet. He was part of the Allied troops who marched into Germany, and he was part of the occupation force there for almost a year. There were no barracks for the soldiers, so where they were stationed was in people's homes, the residents' homes of local families. Elmer said that everyone was very kind and hospitable. They actually seemed to appreciate the United States occupying. With some of Elmer's merchandising experience that he had gained here in Chino, his commanding officer had him organize and set up a little general store for the troops. Now imagine this. He was thrilled one day when fresh apples arrived for the troops from Oregon. He said, his words again, it was a real treat for all of us to have fresh apples. When we think about that, I mean, we go to the market and we just go and we buy our produce and pick apples up and oranges or whatever we're going to get without even giving it a second thought. And here for them in 1918, in occupied Germany, apples was a special treat. Elmer finally returned to Chino in 1919. He was able to take up a job with George Holcomb, and they together developed the Holcomb-Jertberg department store. That was located in downtown Chino. Unfortunately, the business didn't make it out of the Depression, and it collapsed. The Jertbergs were really a true community service family. In 1924, as Don mentioned, Elmer was able to organize the American Legion Post here in Chino. He served as its very first commander. The meetings were conducted here in those days, but it was the Red School brick house, the two-story old red brick house. They would conduct the meetings in the basement. Also, at that time, 3 months later, the Women's Auxiliary was formed. Elmer's wife, Mary Jertberg, would serve as the Women's Auxiliary's first president. My grandmother, Effie Jertberg, would serve as the fourth president. Her daughter, my aunt Anita Grauer, would serve as president in the early 1950s, as would her cousin, Shirley Goff, would also serve as president. The very first meeting of the Women's Auxiliary was held in my great-aunt's home, Winnie Jertberg, that first daughter of Henry and Augusta Jertberg, and she lived up here on Riverside Drive. The first meeting was conducted there. It's interesting that soon after they organized the Legion, Elmer seemed to arrange with his business sense to buy this property for the Legion. A monument was erected. I don't think it was this one, but a monument was erected to the World War I veterans that he arranged for. He then deeded the Legion deeded the school to the city of Chino, and in 1936, the community building, the old red schoolhouse would be torn down, and the community building with the bricks from that old schoolhouse would be built here that we have here. They continued to meet here. Well, actually, they met for a while. The Legion met for a while in the Knights of Pythias building that was downtown. And then when this building was completed, they would meet here. And then finally, the city of Chino bought out the Legion's equity in this property. And it was, they then began the construction of their new Legion Hall that was on Central Avenue just south of C Street. That building is gone now, but you know where the current American Legion Hall is, a little south of here. Another group that my uncle, you don't hear about this group, and I didn't even hear about it until I was doing some research last night about my family. But a group that my Uncle Elmer was responsible for organizing was the Chino World War I Barracks 799. My family had never talked about that. But what it was a service group formed in 1958 with the organization by Elmer Jertberg and his wife Mary, and it was dedicated to helping World War I veterans in particular. They would meet once a month, oftentimes in his own home, to discuss the needs of the veterans and what they could do to help. they would actually, from time to time, be in a position to lobby either local politicians or county or state politicians to try to do more benefits and more things to help World War I veterans. My grandmother, Effie Jertberg, also served in various positions with that group, as of course did Elmer's wife, Mary. One of the things that I found in the Chino Champion that they did was they would make lap blankets or robes for veterans who were confined to wheelchairs. They would then, I'm not exactly sure what those are, but evidently in talking to somebody last night, they said, well, when you sit in a wheelchair, when you're confined to a wheelchair, you get cold. And so they would be some kind of robes or some kind of covering that they would use to try to keep warm. And they would go about and they would deliver these to various veteran hospitals throughout Southern California. But unfortunately, as the World War I veterans passed away, as they got older and passed away, the membership in that group would dwindle, and it was disbanded in 1979, which is probably maybe why most of us don't know about that. But for nearly 20 years, that group served these veterans who had faithfully served throughout the years to the best of their abilities. Of course, really, the Jertberg family, I'm honored to be a member of that family, but it's really just one of many, many families who have served their country and their community throughout the years. Elmer Jertberg died in 1983 at the age of 91, but for as long as he could, he remained active with the American Legion. For 45 years, after the formation, he would serve as the chief financial officer for the Legion for 45 years straight. If you haven't and have the opportunity to stop by the Legion Hall that's located down South Central, take a few minutes and look at the pictures that are in the hallway. There's pictures on the south side of every president of the American Legion from its beginning with Elmer Jertberg all the way to its current commander. They're all on the walls there. They've all got their dates there. And then on the opposite side are pictures of the women who have served as presidents of the Women's Auxiliary through the years. Now, when we look at them, we think, well, there's a name, there's a date. But if we take a moment in thinking about those names and those dates, every single one has a story. Just like the Jertberg family has a story and has a history. And when we take a few moments to reflect on that, these are faithful men and women who served. If you were able to add up all of those years on the wall, it would really be phenomenal to think about all those years. And although we may not know each one of those people on the walls personally, we know this. They loved their country, they loved their families, and they loved Chino. We are all truly honored and blessed to have had them selfishly serve through the years, all to our benefit.
He said it like past tense. I'm still here. That's eerie. Thank you, though. That's beautiful. I have one more presentation of a World War II veteran. I try to do something a little different every year. So this is Diane Deleshemith from Lay's Auxiliary will explain to you and talk to you about this gentleman.
Thank you, Don. And thank you, Steve, for that history about Chino. I was very privileged to know the Jertbergs since 1967 on, and they were very instrumental in my becoming a member of the Auxiliary and remaining a member. Last year at this time, a World War II veteran, Wally Martinez, and his wife Ann sat underneath the canopy over there and were recognized for his service. I've known both of them for about 30 years, not very well, but in their company on many occasions. Wally was a very active American Legion member, even running for state commander many years ago. We had another World War II veteran that was invited to come last year to this event, but chose not to, as he was a pretty humble gentleman that didn't like to be in the spotlight. His name was Robert Jacobs. We know him as Jake. Both of these wonderful men of the greatest generation died within 2 weeks of each other about 2 months ago. For most of us at the American Legion in Chino, we were not aware of Jake's service until his death. Jake was born in Los Angeles and raised in Santa Ana as an only child. World War II broke out and Jake enlisted in the Army Air Corps as he wanted to be a pilot. As the war really heated up, men were needed to go to Europe, so Jake was sent to serve with Sergeant York of Massachusetts. He also served with General George Patton's Third Army. He served in France, Germany, Austria, and Czechoslovakia. Just to put a little perspective on the time, he and his mother corresponded often. In one of her letters to him, she stated that Santa Ana was getting so crowded that they put up a street signal on Main Street. I wonder what she'd think now. Jake was wounded in France with a bullet in his hand, wrist, and arm. He spent 119 days in a hospital in England. He was just 20 years old. His best lifelong friend was also wounded on the same day, about a mile away. The day was November 8th, 1944. When this occurred, Jake's mother received word that her son was missing in action. She did not know for several weeks that he was alive and in a hospital. Can you imagine what that must have been like? Every year on November 8th, until his friend's death a few years ago, Jake would call his friend and they would reminisce about their shared experience. His best friend's son, Jerry, received those calls from Jake after his father's death. Even though Jerry lives in Calistoga in the Napa Valley, he attended and spoke to Jake at Jake's services at Riverside National Cemetery. They had a special bond. Jake received a Purple Heart and 6 other medals for his military service. A little over 2 years ago, Chino Unit 299 American Legion Auxiliary was looking for a veteran that we could adopt. We recognized them on their birthday, Valentine's Day, during the holiday season in December, and on other occasions. Jake's name was given to us as a potential candidate, and I contacted him. He was not so sure at first, but then after some encouragement, he conceded. He began a good friendship. Last year, we threw him a surprise birthday party at the Legion on August 1st. He was 93, and his birthday was really on August 2nd. He was surprised as he didn't expect anyone to remember his birthday. He was a good sport, wearing a silly hat, eating cake and ice cream, and partaking of a celebratory drink with his fellow Legionnaires. He was always so humble and full of gratitude for anything we did for him. He was a special man. We are losing these World War II veterans at an incredible speed. Take the time to reach out to these veterans and all veterans, if only with a smile or hello. Let them know we care. We won't have the opportunity to learn firsthand from them much longer. At this time, I would also like to recognize Jeannie Wood, who was a World War II veteran. She was an Army nurse. She's the only woman commander of Chino Post 299, and she's sitting over there in her wheelchair. Wave, Jeannie. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And a special blessing to all you World War II veterans. There's two or three of you out there, I believe. Jake was a humble ex-GI, but I knew him better. He was a devilish guy, and he'd have a beer or two with us guys, or fellow Legionnaires, and he'd pull out, sometimes he'd bring his ukulele and play his ukulele. That's when he was raising Cain. Anyway, Jake was a good old guy, really was. Okay, we're going to have a placing of the wreaths. And right now we'll start out with Sherry. Sherry Nagat.
Forward, march.
World War One. Nina Navarro, World War II. The Korean conflict. Jeannie Willis. Vietnam, Betty Coram. Desert Storm, Fran Martinez. Iraq, Catherine McDonald. Af- Afghanistan, Renee Jones. Thank you, Ladies Auxiliary. Thank you very much. Now we're going to have History of the Red Poppies by Sherry Nagel. Sherry? I always mispronounce your name.
Yeah, I always mispronounce my name. And I'm from upstate New York originally, and we really messed him up because we lived on Nyan Hill Road. My husband's grandfather owned the house at the bottom of the hill and all the property up the hill. So we used to have a good time with being the Nyans on the Nyan Hill Road. Okie dokie. The Remembrance Poppy was inspired by the World War I poem In Flanders Fields. Its opening lines refer to the many poppies that were the first flowers to grow in the churned-up earth of soldiers' graves in Flanders, a region of Europe that overlies a part of Belgium. It is written from the point of view of the dead soldiers, and in the last verse, they call on the living to continue the conflict. The poem was written by Canadian physician Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae on May 3, 1915, after witnessing the death of his friend, a fellow soldier. The poem was first published on December 8, 1915. Moynia Bell Michael was born August 15, 1869, in Walton County, Georgia. She was the eldest daughter and second of 7 children. She became a professor at the University of Georgia. When the U.S. entered World War I in April 1917, she took a leave of absence from her work and volunteered to assist in the New York-based training headquarters for overseas YWCA workers. She was so inspired by Flanders Fields that she published a poem of her own called We Shall Keep the Faith. In tribute to John McCrae's poem, she vowed to always wear a red poppy as a testament for those who served in the war. In November 18th, at an overseas war conference, she appeared with a silk poppy pinned to her coat and distributed 25 more for those in attending. After the war was over, Miss Michael returned to the University of Georgia and taught a class of disabled servicemen. Realizing the need to provide financial and occupational support for these servicemen, she pursued the idea of selling poppies as a means of raising funds to assist disabled veterans. In 1921, her efforts resulted in the poppy being adopted as a national symbol of recognition for war veterans by the American Legion Auxiliary. One man wrote a poem. One woman had an idea. 97 years later, we still follow the tradition started by the Poppy Lady. By wearing a poppy and donating money to help our auxiliary provide needed assistance, we'll not only honor every service member who died in the name of liberty, freedom, and democracy, but provide an opportunity to support veterans through this simple red flower. The size of your donation is entirely up to you. On behalf of Chino Unit 299, thank you for your help in this worthy cause.
Thank you. Also, thank you, young Marines. You were looking sharp, as well as the Boy Scouts. Thank you very much for your help. And also, I noticed that Norma Torres, is it? She she showed up. She showed up. Here she is. Come on up, Norma Torres. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, thank you so much. Uh, I think it's still morning. This is my third event today. So, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for once again coming together on this Memorial Day. I have a few remarks, if you don't mind me taking a couple of minutes. Thank you all to, especially the Gold Star families that are in the audience today. Our great country would not be what it is today if it not for the men and women throughout our nation's history who has fought and have been willing to give so much of themselves for our country. Today we honor their sacrifice and their bravery. Service members from the 35th Congressional District have gone off to fight in many of the battles of the last century, and far too many have not returned. Our district has lost 17 lives to the still ongoing conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan alone. And there are more than 280,000 veterans living in Los Angeles County and 100,000 living in San Bernardino County. They don't always wear the cap to tell you where they have been, but these 380,000 are our neighbors, our colleagues, and our friends. Memorial Day has always been a very important holiday for me. But it took a whole new meaning when my son told me that he was joining the Air Force. I could hope for the best and pray that he was not sent to a conflict area. But I understand, as a Blue Star mom, that when you take that oath for your country and for a much better and much greater service. I was a lucky mom. My son made it back. But that feeling of knowing that there was the very possibility of my son being in a conflict area and being called upon to make that ultimate sacrifice is what has made Memorial Day even that much more special for me. For too many families, that fear becomes a reality. And while we recognize the men and women who have given their lives for our country, let's also remember the Gold Star families that have sacrificed alongside them. On this Memorial Day, we not only remember the fallen, but also remind our friends and neighbors who have lost loved ones to a war that their sacrifice will never be forgotten. We honor them, we honor you as well. Every man and woman in the armed forces is more than their uniform. They have a face, a story, a family, and a home. And to all of you Gold Star parents and family members out there in the audience today, I want to say, on behalf of the 750,000 residents of this district that I represent, I want to thank you. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your sacrifice, for everything that you have given up, for us to enjoy this wonderful country, for our freedom and what we collectively believe in, justice for all. Thank you all for being here today. Mayor, thank you so much to the city. I have a certificate recognizing your work and the city council for every year having this wonderful ceremony for your constituents, our mutual constituents, and thank you so much. An American Legion Post 244, $2.99. I owe you a new one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For all you do. Thank you.
You could tell that's from the bottom of her heart because she has a GI for her son. And like she said, she prayed that he wouldn't be in harm's way. And when they send us out, you don't know if you're going to be stateside for a duration or you're going to be over there putting up with whatever. It's probably pretty ugly. I didn't see combat, thank God, but I imagine from what I've read and some of the stories that I've heard from some of the people that it's not nice. So anyway, God bless all you gentlemen and women also that have seen combat. All right, we're going to have our honor guard with our 21 gun salute. Please cover your ears if you have a delicate hearing. Thank you. That was beautiful. I see we have some volunteers in there I didn't recognize till right now. But thank you for stepping up. That's what makes it all the better when we have last-minute volunteers to step up.
Commander, can I say a few words, please?
Yes. Here comes Bertie.
All right, Bernie, it's all yours. Last year, I'm not a Chino resident, but my heart is in Chino. Last year, I came with my cane. I left Abel home, and he was unhappy when I came home. So, no, I want to let you people know that I'm from a family of 4 people that served. Of my brothers and myself, we served 29 years in the armed forces. I was watching TV this morning and I saw our president put the wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier. And I tell you, people, I about cried. 11 years ago, I was honored with 80 people from Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills to go on a heritage tour. I was one of the 2 veterans that was in attendance of the 80 people. I was so honored to be chosen to put the wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier. I'll never forget that day. I want to say God bless you and God bless America. And at my little presentation last Thursday night, keep smiling, people. We're going through some trying times. And like the song says, smile, and the world smiles with you. Sing a song. Don't be dreary, just be cheery all day long. Whenever your troubles, your trials, and your cares seem to be more than you can really bear, smile, and the world smiles with you. Sing a song. Thank you, and God bless.
Some of you know Bernie, but we have bank meetings, and he always opens his meetings with a prayer, and he always acknowledges us veterans, and that's really great. Again, thank you, Bernie. Okay, we're going to have our closing prayer. Okay, those of you who have headgear, please uncover. Our Heavenly Father, we deem this a fitting time to pay our respects to our departed comrades as we stand with our heads bowed in reverence to them. Let us remember the good deeds they accomplished. Let us revere them as good soldiers who fought a good fight in a just cause. Let us silently pray for peace, the peace that passes all understanding, and let us in mind and soul consecrate our hearts and lives to the real America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, the American worth fighting for. As we stand in silence to our departed comrades, may we sincerely say, may their souls rest in peace. Let us also remember our POWs and MIAs still unaccounted for from all the wars and conflicts. Amen. Cover. This concludes our ceremony this year. You're all welcome to go down to Post 299. We're having a potluck. So thank you very much. We have a good turnout after all. Take care.
Thank you for your work.